Fanfic Corner, Special Edition. Winter Solstice, a Dragon Prince Winter fanfic. The Winter Solstice was one of the 4 big seasonal events in Zadia. All 4 had their own charm. The spring equinox had flowers, the summer solstice had summer treats, and the fall equinox had the changing leaves. But the winter solstice had snow and ice and everything that went with them. There was ice skating, ice fishing, ice sculptures, sledding, sleigh rides, and other winter activities. There was also hot chocolate, cookies, and peppermint sticks. Everyone loved the winter solstice, especially now that peace was secure. Rayla woke up to find winter sunlight streaming through her window. As much as she hated being cold, she loved winter. The snow was pretty, and there wasn't much to do at night except stay in and cuddle with Callum. She had been living in Katolis for almost 2 years now, and this was her second winter solstice at the palace. With her people having banished her, Rayla had moved into the palace at Katolis and married Callum. Suddenly, Rayla felt a pair of lips brush her cheek as her husband wrapped his arms around her. "You're up early," Callum said as he held her close. "Force of habit," Rayla said, trying not to look at the empty bassinet. Even a month and a half later, it still hurt to think about the baby they lost during the epidemic. A virus had swept through Katolis, and while the healers and mages managed to find a cure, even if the source of the virus still eluded them, it wasn't enough to save the long-awaited child of the prince and princess. Callum kissed her cheek again. "I know," he said. "I miss him too." "He was barely a year old," Rayla said through tears. "It's not fair." The kingdom shared their princess's grief. Nearly everyone had lost a loved one in the epidemic. The Harvest Festival hadn't been as happy as in years past. Too many people were in mourning over their losses. But they also knew that their loved ones would want them to celebrate. That's why the winter solstice was so important this year. Despite their grief, everyone in the kingdom had done what they could to make it special. "We should get up," Callum said. "The festival starts in a few hours." The fairgrounds outside the palace were decorated with evergreen branches, pine cones, and crystal snowflakes, and icicles. Fire pits were off to the side where visitors could get warm. Stands for hot food and drinks were set up, as well as ones for games and wares. Several artists, including Atari, had been invited to the winter solstice to sell some of the things they made. Atari was actually in the process of moving from the Silver Grove to Katolis. 2 years of being separated from Rayla was enough, and after hearing about the loss of their son, he wanted to be there for Rayla and Callum. Until Callum figured out how to break the spell that kept Ruan and Rayla's parents trapped in their coins, Rayla and Atari were all each other had left. Elves and humans were already there trying to enjoy the festival. The royal family was there in the new clothes that the royal seamstress and tailor made for them. Dressing like a princess wasn't something Rayla had gotten used to. Fortunately, she didn't have to do so very often, but this was one of the times she had to. The royal seamstress had made her a beautiful dress with crystals along the hem, waist, sleeves, and neckline, and Atari had made her a beautiful crown of crystal snowflakes. Though it was hard for Rayla to be happy as she had been in the past. Her mind kept drifting to her baby and how, this time last year, she and Callum were presenting their son to the kingdom. She could feel her eyes start to get wet with tears. Suddenly, she felt something else. Her stomach began to churn. Clapping a hand over her mouth, she rushed off and emptied her stomach of her breakfast. Rayla, are you all right? Callum asked. Rayla straightened, thankful that she hadn't gotten anything on her shoes, dress, and cloak. I'm fine, she said, straightening her crown and smoothing out her dress. My stomach was just a little upset. It must have been something I ate. Callum wasn't so sure about that, since he had the exact same thing for breakfast as Rayla, and he didn't feel sick. But he wasn't going to argue with her either. The royal family was expected at the seasonal festivals. That meant they couldn't leave just yet. But if Rayla was sick again, Callum would insist that they went back to the castle. Come on, Callum said, taking Rayla's gloved hand. Let's see what Atari has for sale at his booth. With her stomach somewhat calmed, Rayla closed her hand around Callum's. Atari's booth was close to one of the fire pits, so there were lots of people there. Women and girls looked over the beautiful jewelry he was selling. Hi, Atari, Callum said. Your Highness, Atari said, bowing his head in respect. Trumpets sounded, calling everyone to the stage. Ezra's speech was about to begin. Callum and Rayla had to be there with him. Once the crowd had gathered, Ezra started his speech. My friends, he said, I know the past 2 months have been difficult. We all lost someone we loved, but we must take heart that they would not want us to grieve forever. As we enter winter, we should remember those that were lost and look ahead to the future. Rayla stood by Callum's side, listening to Ezra. Suddenly, she began to feel dizzy. Then everything went black. Rayla woke to find herself in the bed that she and Callum shared. She had no idea how she got there. The last thing she remembered was that she was at the festival, listening to Ezra's speech. You're awake, Callum said, getting up from his chair beside the bed. What happened? Rayla asked, sitting up. You fainted, the healer said, coming up to them. Not all that uncommon for a woman in your condition. What do you mean? Rayla asked as Callum took her hand. Princess Rayla, you're 3 months pregnant. Okay, before I sign off, I'd like just to say one thing, that is, I will continue with this story for my spring fanfic reading, Spring Equinox, so look forward for that. Second, if any of you out there have a fanfic or short story you would like me to do a reading on for Fanfic Corner or Story Corner, feel free to send it to my Tumblr account, Facebook page, or Facebook group. I will have the link for all 3 in the description section. Couple of things to keep in mind. First off, please be sure to include your name, or if you're submitting someone else's work, the name of the author. Second, please try to keep them short. Third, please try to keep them clean and appropriate. Fourth, if it's a holiday fanfic or short story, please submit 2 months before the holiday. And be sure to include the name and date of the holiday. Finally, please be honest.